Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 98 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this new moon episode, we discuss anxiety and mental health. We speak with Dr. Nicole Cain, a clinical psychologist, holistic anxiety expert, and author of Panic Proof. I also review the book Good Vibes, Good Life: How Self-Love is the Key to Unlocking Your Greatness by Vex King. And the episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for overcoming anxiety. But first, let me share with you some really personal stuff. They say the timing is always right, and it seems very ironic that this particular episode is airing today. In the last month, I've been going through some very big challenges in my personal life. So the topic of anxiety is very familiar to me right now. And before I start talking about what I've been facing or how I've been dealing with it, I wanted to give some background about my interview with Dr. Nicole Cain. It was interesting because I just walked in the door from coming back from London. I'd just been in the UK for a few days to visit family and friends in London and Manchester. And that was a very emotional journey. And because I just got off a flight and had, all this emotional upheaval, I didn't have time to actually prepare any questions, but I thought I would challenge myself and be okay with the unpreparedness and just be present and intuitive with the interview. And I didn't expect to vibe so well with Dr. Nicole Cain because the topic of anxiety didn't feel like it was part of my passions at the time, but it was very unexpected and a very, very pleasant surprise. And we went way over time, which is always a good sign because I usually allocate about 45 minutes for my interviews. But there seemed to be a lot to say. But now that was about a month ago that when we did the interview. And since then, I've been going through some really contrasting events in my life. I've had some incredible joy with the publication of my 4th book. And I've had lots of promotion, lots of media attention, which is really nice. It's very validating to know that your crazy ideas are held and being promoted by other people and being appreciated, which is always nice because sometimes being a content creator is kind of a lonely journey, and it's kind of like an uphill battle sometimes. You're just on your own, just making all this content and then looking at numbers online. And then you kind of forget sometimes that behind those numbers there is a person. It's very nice to have that kind of more face-to-face, in-person feedback, which I do find very encouraging and motivating as well. And I'm not going to go into what has been going on in my life, but what has been interesting is how I've coped with it, because I've just had so much growth in the past. And I do think the challenges in our lives, moments of emotional upheaval, pain, etc., are moments for potential transformation. And that's how I like to deal with it. I do believe that pain is our greatest teacher. And I have been kind of processing some things. And I think old me would have overshared with friends like what's going on with me, just to try and get some support and just to be held by others. And that's great. It's good to have a circle of people who can hold space for you. But also recently, my trust, the trust I had with some friends has been broken. Some things that I confided in someone were repeated to the wrong people. And that has had a massive impact on my life this whole year. Earlier in the year, maybe it was actually last year now, I interviewed a celebrity psychic. And I remember he said to me that your friends are going to disappoint you. And I was thinking, no, I've got this like solid group of friends. No way, I can't believe that. And then just after that interview, I went to an event and I saw a friend, and then she revealed to me that she had let one of my secrets escape. And she just said it in a very matter-of-fact way. No sorry, no apologizing. And I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. And that has been a massive blow to me ever since. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I tried to kind of gauge, well, what have you said to who? How do they react? And it just I felt very exposed, because even though I do make content about, sexuality, relationships, and I reveal a lot of my, thoughts and experiences, I do feel I'm in control of my narrative, and I'm kind of sharing from a space of what I've learned rather than implicating third parties and bringing drama, into my content. That's not what I want about at all. And also, I tend to attract very private people in my life. So out of respect to those people, I don't want to narrate my life in real time like it's a soap opera. That's not what I want to do at all. So when my trust was broken, the trust was it was gone. I was incredibly disappointed, and I have had to deal with that all year, this disintegration of support system that I thought I had. And but that's not really what I've been dealing with in the last month. There's something else, and some other things happening. And the old me would have reached out to people and said, hey, hold space for me. But now I have a very, very good friend that I trust so much. And she taught me the power of silence. And I have been really learning and exploring this modality of just sitting in silence and processing and not sharing. And that's very kind of against who I am and how I've been in the past. And I found it to be so liberating, so peaceful. And now every morning I'm spending 10 to 15 minutes just sitting in silence. Before, I would be trying to fill the silence with music. But now I'm just listening, observing my thoughts and processing pain. And I just feeling how things are moving through my body, and just taking notes. And also just trying to find lessons. I do like to find meaning in things. And something that one of the same friends said last week when we were at an event, she said, intuition doesn't always know why. And I think I've been really tapping into how my body feels about things. And sometimes things can just feel wrong and you don't know why. But then with time and more information, then you can kind of understand why. But sometimes it does take time until you can get to that point, if at all. So now I'm just kind of like not asking why so much and just feeling, observing and accepting. And that has been my process over the last month. But in parallel, I've been going through this incredible moments of absolute joy and success and growth, which has been amazing. So I do feel that, pain can propel you to grow in ways that can feel unfamiliar sometimes. It can feel a little bit uncomfortable too, because sometimes it feels safe to stay where you are. But now I am incredibly grateful for everything that's happened to me in the last month and the growth that has occurred thanks to it. And also another thing I've been doing to kind of process my feelings and my emotions and my inner world is that I've been really getting into journaling a lot. Also because I've been asked to host a workshop at Barcelona Journaling Weekend. So I've kind of thought, well, I may as well, actually practice what I preach. So it's become a daily activity for me now. And it's kind of really cathartic to get all of your thoughts and emotions onto a paper. I'm also mega paranoid about anyone finding these papers because I've really gone for it. So I tend to write in different languages. I speak 4 languages: French, Spanish, Catalan, and English. So I'm writing this mishmash, this kind of potpourri of different languages that no one will understand, and plus my messy handwriting. If anyone finds it, it's going to be okay. It's going to be impossible to decipher. So that's been my process right now. However, I do think that, if you are going through difficult times, sometimes you might need more than silence and journaling. You might need to connect with a professional, and that's something that I think is always a good idea to do. But for me, I don't think it's that serious. What I've been going through, it's just something that's a learning process, and I've been held by friends who value noble silence as well, and and trustworthiness, which is becoming one of my most important values. And I think I've shared with you before, like the more well known you become, the more precious and sacred your private life becomes. And that has been the case for me, especially now with I've been in lots of media here in Spain. I've got some more media coming, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I also have the global launch of my book in January. But even though I value my privacy, I will still have lots of juice to share with you on here. So keep listening. Dear listener, due to popular demand, I am so thrilled to be offering 60-minute Zoom sessions just for you. Imagine an hour talking to me, oh my God, about all of the topics that I am a specialist in. I can help you with sexual wellness consulting. That could involve your sexual wellness business or even your personal life if you need some sex coaching to spice up your life with your partner, or even your solo sex life. I can definitely help you with that. I'm also offering self-love mentoring, and I'll be testing out my materials for my forthcoming self-love retreat. And these sessions are getting some excellent feedback. I'm also offering orgasmic manifestation, the sex magic guidance, which is the topic of my book. And it's something that I am also very passionate about. I'm having excellent results with. And also, life in Barcelona. If you want to visit Barcelona or live in Barcelona, I am your woman. I can provide you with lots of tips. And last but not least, if you need a personal shopper for your pleasure product purchases, PPPPP, I am your woman. So we can connect and I will show you the best products for your needs. So are you ready to take the next step? If so, secure your spot today by visiting my website, venusohara.org, or you can click on the link in the show notes below. Let's make this hour all about you and your orgasmic journey. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We'll be speaking with Dr. Nicole Cain, a clinical psychologist, holistic anxiety expert, and the author of Panic Proof. Dr. Nicole Cain, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yeah, my area of expertise is anxiety. My mission is to help people learn how to decode the symptoms of anxiety and translate them into strategies for really, truly healing.
So what inspired you to follow this path?
It was out of necessity. You and I were, before we started hitting the record button, we were talking about wounded healers.
Mm.
And so many of us come from backgrounds of stress and questionable family dynamics and maybe health and grief. And that was my story. Is I was brought into my family and I felt kind of in the role of caretaker. And so it didn't feel solid and secure, and it didn't feel safe in all of the instances. And so I found that I was trying to create that safety. I was trying to regulate my parents' moods and emotions. We moved a lot. And so there was just a lot of stress. And by the time I hit college, I was on 6 different prescriptions for different health things like asthma and rhinitis, which is
The
congestion,
nose.
nasal
Yeah.
congestion, and anxiety and heart palpitations and all the things. And I wasn't getting any healthier. In fact, I was probably getting less healthy. And so I decided that I wanted to understand how to help people and to do so in a way where I was empowered to do it naturally. And so I studied clinical psychology, went to naturopathic medical school, which is amazing. In the US and Arizona, naturopathic medical school is a mixture. You learn all the things that a typical MDDO learns, but then we learn all sorts of wonderful integrative naturopathic stuff. Like you and I were talking about eclectic herbalism. We learn acupuncture. We learn about nutrition, and we learn lifestyle and trauma work. And so I was doing all of those things until rock bottom in 2015. And I was the expert at helping people get better, and people would turn to me for their integrative treatment protocols. I was very passionate about mental health. And then I had my own really severe mental health crisis in 2015 where I stopped sleeping. And then the body was in this constant autonomic arousal, and I was panicking, and it felt like my chest was on fire and my muscles were twitching involuntarily. And it was just awful and agonizing. And those moments, those kind of dark circles of hell, are where we get to choose. Do I want to burn it to the ground and rise like the phoenix? Or is this the end of the conversation for me? And I wanted to rise like the phoenix. And so, which is beautiful that this all took place in Phoenix. And
Well,
so, such a lovely metaphor. I'm like, all right, universe, I hear you. And
mm,
so I started to ask a lot of questions from this place of unknowing, this place of perceived powerlessness, this place of absolute collapse and despair. I started asking questions. I started to talk to my anxiety and say, what is it you're here for? What are you doing? What is your mission?
were you medicated
And
at this point? Were you taking
I
the
was
six?
very medicated at this point.
Okay.
Yes, I
Mm,
was taking antidepressant. I was taking a benzodiazepine, which is like Xanax
mm.
or Klonopin. And I was taking Ambien. I was taking so many sedating supplements and medications. I remember driving through the pharmacy, and the pharmacist is like, this could kill you. Like, this is a lot of medication. And I was like, that doesn't help. I'm already freaking out.
Mm.
And through this journey, through this transformation, I started to understand what my symptoms were telling me, and my approach completely changed. And since that time, I've been working with clients to help them get through this kind of similar rock bottom. I've taken all the supplements, I've done all the meditations, I've had their oil poured on my third eye by an Ayurvedic healer, and it's not going away. And so that's been my mission, and that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what the book is about.
So tell us about your book, Panic Proof. I've just been reading your book. What inspired you to
Yes.
read it? To write it, sorry, not to read it. What inspired you to
Yes.
write it?
It was the book I needed to read.
Okay.
When
Mm,
I was growing up. And I found
mm,
when I was with my clients, I repeated myself a lot. And there
mm,
were these things I wanted them to understand. And I didn't find that there was a place online or a resource that I could send them to that had the total trauma informed integrative information that I wanted. And I was like, I should just write this all down for people. And then they can have a book, and they can take it and they can make it their own and be empowered with that information. And so that was where Panic Proof came from.
amazing. So I've been reading your book. I actually read it on the plane, and I've been reading it during my morning coffees. It's been,
Yes.
but it was interesting at the beginning when you talked about, this massive responsibility of work. It made me think I actually like being a freelancer because I thought, sometimes when you think about scaling a business, like responsibilities increase. And
Yeah.
that can be quite challenging because it's kind of hard just working as a solopreneur. You've got enough kind of things keeping you up at night, but then you have
Yes.
bigger structures. It's more lots of responsibility, and to
Yes.
people, to loans, to like all this stuff. It really made me think, wow, this is interesting. Mm,
Which is, I think, so relevant in this economic climate, is
mm,
the cost of goods is so high. Wages are comparatively significantly less, and more people are struggling financially. And our body tries to help us be more capable of adapting to
mm,
this greater amount of stress. And so the body will make more stress hormone. The body will turn up your emotional centers of the brain, like the amygdala. And that will trigger a cascade of hormonal changes, which can affect your gut microbiome
Mm.
and your nervous system, your estrogen. And that can affect our sexual well-being, which I know is a big mission of yours, is to support people through that process. And so when we think about the world of anxiety, it's so far reaching. It can affect us in all sorts of different areas of our lives.
So in the book, I read it was reading about, depression, anxiety, and you had different, maybe different people experience those things or react to those things in different ways. For some different definitions, I'm kind of curious about, when does sadness become depression? When does stress become anxiety? Where is the line? Because obviously life is nuanced. We go through ups and downs. Let's say someone's gone through a breakup, they lost their job. When does that sadness become depression? When should someone seek help?
I think about it in terms of your sense of personal power.
Mhm.
And so if I lost my job and I'm grieving that,
Mhm.
we can grieve from a place of honor, from a place of personal power. It's a way of respecting the importance of what it was that we lost. But when that grief starts to take away your life or make your world smaller, then it's a symptom. Then it's data that, okay, something that we were honoring has now become something that is preventing us from living, thriving, growing. And similar with stress is really good. Stress is what helped you get through the airport quickly because
Mm.
you were traveling recently. And
Yeah.
if you were just lollygagging through the airport and stopping in all the shops, you may not have made it to your plane on time. And so you had just the right amount of stress to motivate you to get there, which helped your heart beat faster. And that helped deliver oxygenated blood to your muscles that helped you walk more quickly and roll your bag and helped your brain to be crisp and say, okay, what gate am I at? Right. So that
Mm.
stress enabled you to have greater life. But when stress starts to mount and it stays around out of context of being valuable and it starts to drain your sense of personal agency, that's when it becomes a symptom. That's when it becomes something that we want to then start to recalibrate or treat.
Mhm. So how do we treat them? Because you've shared so many very interesting facts about antidepressants in your book. Would you like to share what you found?
There's this chemical imbalance theory that's been predominated since the 60s. Is they when they discovered serotonin, it was like a light bulb moment for the medical system. Is they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's this chemical and oh wow, we developed a drug. Prozac was the first one. We developed this drug that can modify this chemical." And then in studies, it took quite a lot of studies to prove that it worked better than placebo, which is a whole other conversation, but some people feel better. And so then they put a period at the end of the sentence and they're like, okay, imbalances in chemicals that can be corrected by medications. That's the way we're going to understand psychiatry. And while for some people, these chemical changing medications, whatever category they are, they can be helpful and life saving. But the chemical imbalance theory was debunked in 2022, where the researchers found that our understanding of why these medications work or why they don't work is really, really flawed.
Mm.
And it kind of brought us back to the drawing board where, well, this person felt better on Lexapro. It's not necessarily because Lexapro increased their serotonin. There's something else to the conversation. We don't know what that is. Is it that Lexapro changes the gut microbiome? I don't know. Is it that it can increase neuroplasticity and the brain is healing itself? We're not sure. And so what's beautiful about not knowing is that it gives us the freedom and the space to try to figure out what might be going on. And my starting place is to look at the symptoms that somebody has when they're out of balance, whether they're depressed or stressed or panicking or they have headaches or digestive upset or anorgasmia, they
Mm.
aren't able to have an orgasm, whatever it is we want to look at the symptoms and then allow the symptoms to inform what might be at the root so that instead of just suppressing the symptoms, we're actually treating what's underneath of the symptoms.
So in your experience, do you think a lot of this anxiety and depression comes from environmental factors, or is it something internal? What have you seen the most of, or is it just a blend? Because I
I
think a
think
lot of
that's a
people look, I think a lot of people look for like the external to change, when things are not
yeah.
going quite right, and that they just want external factors that we can't control to change, rather than thinking, it's how you accept things. Mm.
That's so brilliant. I'm
Mm.
smiling because I think that's such a wise observation. And so it can be internal, and internal, I mean our hormones, our neurotransmitters, our gut, our immune system. It can be our genetics, it could be nutrition, it could be detox, it could be mold exposure. So there's lots of internal things that could be happening, processes. It could be external, like you were wondering. It could be that there's chemicals in your water. It could be that you grew up in a very difficult family environment. It
Mm.
could be that you need a relationship-ectomy,
Oh
or
yeah, I love that word.
you need to get that person out. So it's multifactorial. And so which I love, because the chemical imbalance theory is like, this is it. This is why you're
Mm.
depressed and anxious. You need serotonin. We got it in a patented pill that you can go get at the pharmacy. Your insurance will cover it. The end. But as you wisely are wondering, you pointed out, is there's a lot more to the conversation.
Mm. I remember once I went to the doctor, because I'm a bit of a light sleeper, because I think I've lived in too many places. Well, that's a good thing, but it's always been hard for me to just wind down at night. And I went to my doctor, and he prescribed me like Xanax or something like Xanax, just to, because it was more anxiety, rather than it was about the falling asleep rather than
The
um,
staying.
staying asleep. So then he told me to he gave me the lowest dose, and he told me to take one every 8 hours for 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, I just knew in my heart that that wasn't a good idea. Because I've had
Yes.
friends who've been, they've been going through difficult times, and obviously everyone has a different situation. But I found a lot of friends who've gone down this route, they become quite numb to life. That's why it's quite interesting. That's why I asked you earlier when if you were actually taking
Yeah.
stuff when you had these lucid moments, because I think that also affects libido, and actually sex can actually really, and sport can actually really make you feel better. So it can make you
Yes.
feel alive, if you're taking all these things. What do you think about that?
My story started with insomnia. And
Mhm.
so my soul resonates with your story. I was given a benzodiazepine. Xanax is a benzodiazepine. I was given a
Mm,
longer acting one because staying asleep was
mm,
also a problem for me.
mhm,
But I think what I would have loved your doctor to do is to maybe give you the Xanax temporarily, if that was right for you,
mhm,
but then to put a semicolon at the end of that instead of a period.
mm,
And so, okay, we're going to help you acutely, and we're going to give you something to relax or sedate you acutely. And there's pharmaceutical versions of that. I could provide lots of ideas of natural solutions for that. But I think even more beautiful and powerful is to then put a semicolon there and say, what adaptive mechanism is in place that is resulting in you not winding down? And so I'll say that again in easier to understand language, is that there's something going on that you have adapted to. And when you've adapted to whatever that thing is that's going on, is it made you more aroused? And so the question is, okay, we know you're aroused. You're trying to go to sleep. It's difficult to fall asleep. Why is that? So then we can look and say, okay, maybe it's hormonal.
mm,
Maybe it could be cortisol stress hormone. So cortisol stress hormone, when we're stressed, when we're busy, when we're really entrepreneurial and we're burning the candle at both ends, when we have a lot of pressure, performance, deadlines, our body produces stress hormone. And sometimes that stress hormone doesn't release in its normal cyclical pattern. And I know that's really important to you and your work is cycles.
mm,
And our body's very cyclical. And so your cortisol should spike in the morning and it should go down throughout the day and be at its lowest in the evening. And just like if our a female's menstrual cycles are off balance can cause a whole myriad of symptoms. Your stress hormone cycles, if they're off balance, that can create insomnia and anxiety. And so, yes, you could take the benzo that will make you fall asleep. But if the reason that you're not sleeping is because your body is trying to keep you more aroused with the stress hormone, that's an obstacle to cure. So when you come off of the benzo, if that root cause hasn't been corrected, you're going to have trouble sleeping again. So it's just like one little example. Another example, if I may,
Mhm.
that's really relevant right now for people is histamine. Histamine is a chemical released by your immune system that we all know for the itchy, runny eyes, kind of watery nose, the skin rashes. We pop a Benadryl if we feel like a little bit of an allergy attack coming on. That same chemical that's really quite high right now when we're recording this conversation in the fall is a big cause of panic attacks. It can be as stimulating as adrenaline. And so if you are anxious, if you have allergy symptoms, you can't fall asleep, and the doctor gives you a Zoloft or a Prozac or a sertraline, now you have all this serotonin kind of chemically numbing you out, but it's not treating the histamine imbalance. And so that's an obstacle to cure. So those are kind of two examples of that.
So what about overthinking? How does that come into it? Just because I think for me, when I don't sleep, it's overthinking. So how does that come
Yeah.
into those definitions?
Let's explore that more because I'm questioning, is it the chicken or is it the egg?
Um,
So you have thought anxiety in that example,
mm,
right? So your brain is like, I'm thinking, I'm thinking. The brain loves thinking, especially brilliant people like you. It's
oh, thank
one
you.
of your zones
Mm,
of genius
mm.
is analysis and thinking and asking questions. So if you notice that, and maybe in the moment we can do this together. So if you notice thinking, so think of the last time that happened to you where you felt like your brain was just racing.
Oh, all the
How many
time. Yeah,
all the
all the
time?
time. Because I think for me, it's not always a bad thing. It can be exciting thinking, oh, tomorrow I've got this happening, because I'm living in
Yes.
Europe, but I've got a lot of clients in the US. So I get emails at night. And because I'm a freelancer, I still look at the emails late and I'm like, oh, yeah. I get really excited, because I've created this crazy
Yeah.
job for myself. So I think, oh, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do this. And I get ideas and I write things down so I don't forget. So sometimes it can be really actually fun. And I've actually created a life because I've had insomnia most of my life. I've been doing what I do for 15 years, and to combat my own insomnia, I have no alarm for 15 years. That's the number one. That's the number one tip that I have. Obviously, not everyone can live like that, and I've created like this oasis in my environmental factors. I have a weighted blanket. I have like the most comfortable bed. I meditate. I have my lavender, and I have my little wind down thing with my acupressure mat and all that, and meditation music. Don't even have a TV. So I have all of that, but still there can be some excitement
Yes.
or worry happening. But yeah, having
Yes.
no alarm and just scheduling things for the afternoon is kind of how I deal with that. But then once I'm kind of out of that, my environment, then things can be very tough and I might need that's why I take sometimes have the Xanax, the packet the doctor gives me lasts me a year. He gives me like 24 pills, lasts me again. I take half. He says, no, don't worry about it if I take my, but I'm really proud of the fact that I only have to go for that once a year because in those moments of travel or visiting family where I can be a little bit stressed, then that's when I'll take something because I'm not in my normal environment with my weighted blanket and all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is brilliant. And I've worked with a lot of
Mhm.
pilots,
Mhm.
and you have like the schedule of an airplane pilot,
Oh,
right? So
wow.
it changes, right? So you had a tendency perhaps to maybe be
Mm,
a little bit more of a night owl.
mhm,
And so that we could follow that back into your origin story. But what I think is really cool about what you've done is that you had a tendency, and instead of trying to recalibrate that tendency, which some of us do, which is fine, but what I think is really cool about it is that you enabled that to empower you to create new tendencies.
mm,
So you're a night owl. You could have tried to sedate yourself all the time and be a morning person, or you could be like, you know what? I'm kind of excited. I'm writing things down. I'm working with my US clients and people all around the world. I'm not going to set an alarm. I'm going to have a routine to calm my body, but I'm just going to kind of be in flow, which then I would argue isn't a symptom. It's
Mm.
the life that you've created. But let's say that there's somebody who's listening to this conversation and they're like, I work a 9 to 5 job. And so I have to have a life with an alarm clock. And so then let's say that they're going to bed at night. Maybe they are naturally a night owl, but they can't change their life to do that. So they get thoughts. Their
Mm.
thoughts are racing at nighttime because they're not able to creatively express or exercise or have sex or do any of the things to release that energy that their body is producing. And so then it comes out in thoughts that then create anxiety, and then they try to suppress it, and then the body is still wanting to be in alert, so then they get more symptoms and then more things to suppress it, and on and on and on. So those are kind of like two directions this tendency can go in a fork in a road, and I think that you went in a beautiful empowered direction.
It's definitely that's actually what inspired me to create this podcast because I had an interview with Marie Claire Brazil years ago about sex. I'm a sex toy designer, I'm a sex toy educator, and I used to call myself an orgasm activist. But anyway, this woman she's all in panic, and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be late. I'm in a traffic jam." And I was like, "It's okay." The time difference was kind of late for me. And then she was like apologizing when we got on the call, and I was like chilled. And then she was like, I told her I had no alarm. And that was the
Yeah.
detail of our conversation when we're talking about orgasm and taboo and all these other exciting things. But that was the detail that really impacted her most about our conversation. I thought, wow, I really have to share more things about my life. So this podcast, The Orgasmic Lifestyle, is about reaching climax in all areas of life. So we have the books, the nutrition, sobriety. I'm really passionate about sobriety and spirituality as well. So and personal development. So that's what actually, because I wanted to share more with the world about. And I started off, it was called No Alarm Life at the beginning, but it's now the orgasmic lifestyle. But sometimes
Yeah.
talk about orgasm though. I used to have an orgasm at night because one thing that's good about that is because when you have these, let's say, erotic thoughts, you're not having the worrying thoughts. So it's a really good distraction, like mentally and physically. But I suffer with something called nocturia, and that's my big issue. It had a massive impact on my life, so huge that I don't do sleepovers. When someone invites me to go, let's say, on a country cottage for the weekend, I don't go. If I go on retreats, I have to get my own room, so it's always the most expensive option. And also with sleeping with partners, I've kind of like avoided that. So it's just something that's been had a huge impact on my life. So really having that emotional regulation is really quite difficult. Because I think there's like the environmental factors, but also the emotional um factors as well. Do you have any tips about, let's say, winding down? 'Cause I think that's a problem with most people because of smartphones. People are on screens. That must be a big factor in these circumstances of insomnia.
Yeah, the brain, there was this research study that was done, and it was talking about how the brain receives 11 billion data points per second.
Wow.
And that's a lot of data points when it turns out we can only process about 50 of them per
Wow.
second. So it's like a big colander, if you will, a big strainer. And all of this information is coming in, and it's interoceptive information and external information from the environment. And your body has to largely ignore what isn't relevant. And so I think about the way that our brain's filtration system develops. And I think about something like nocturia,
Mm,
where along the way, something occurred where the internal cues from the body that are going to the brain that says we got to wake up,
mm,
that got ignored. It's getting ignored.
mm,
And so what that tells me is that there's an opportunity for exploring the ways that the brain and the nervous system have been calibrated. And I really appreciate what you were talking about in terms of calming the nervous system and then excitation of the nervous system. And so in neurology, we talk about this as sympathetic
mm,
activation, which is that excitement, adrenaline, cortisol, it's that fight, flight, freeze, or excitement, or arousal. Or the opposite would be parasympathetic, which is that rest, digest, and reproduce. And it turns out that we need to have a balance of that in order to not only be able to perceive our interoception, those data points from our body, like I'm feeling excited and lubricated and aroused, or I have to pee, or I'm hungry, or I'm hot. It could be anything from the body and what's going on in the environment. And so when it comes to the process of orgasm, is that if somebody is in too aroused or too sympathetic or too activated of a state, that's going to inhibit our ability to obtain arousal. And so there was this way to remember it that we were taught in medical school. We call it point and shoot. And then you want to hit a bullseye. So point and shoot. Shoot, you hit a bullseye, that's orgasm. That's yay, everything is good. But we have to start with the point, and the point is parasympathetic. So the P is for parasympathetic, and that's really practicing being in the body. This is relaxing the body. These are the things that you were talking about, using your essential oils and practicing orgasm at nighttime, relaxing in a weighted blanket, and whatever it is that brings you into your centered zone.
Mm.
And then we start to build, and so we have this foundation of parasympathetic deliciousness. I'm calm, I'm feeling really good, I'm relaxed, and then the excitation can build. And so then you start getting a release of serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin and adrenaline in the right amounts, and then we can have climax. But it's, as you were saying, is we want to have this balance between the two states. And so with the environment, if there's all of this external overwhelm, like screens and news flashes and calendar reminders and alarms, and then tons of interoceptive data, or maybe we're completely shut off from our body because it's just too much, then it's going to start to cause negative influences in our ability to enjoy our sex life.
Do you have any tips about just let's say 3 tips for a good wind down? So I think this is something that people are taking their phones to bed with them. People are really getting
Yeah.
distracted and scrolling, and then they're getting all this bad information, FOMO from Instagram, and
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I think one that would be I really resonate with your audience is self-touch, and it can be
Mm,
non-sexual self-touch.
that's two things.
So yeah, like, and I really like the gesture that you just did. So you crossed your arms in like a butterfly hug.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can squeeze and massage your arms. And crossing is particularly wonderful that you did that, is because you're crossing the midline. And so information from the right side of the body is going to the left side of the body. And so it activates the brain in a different way. And you can take your hand and you can just rest it on your shoulder and allow the weight of your arm to pull down the shoulder. You can massage your feet. You can maybe even they have these fun reflexology socks that you can buy
Oh, wow.
online, and you can massage different points in the feet. You can massage your temples, around your eyes, maybe even have fun with acupuncture points. And so, for example, there's the Omnian point, which is if you take the tops of your ears and you follow that like you're wearing a headband all the way to the top center of your head, and then you can massage that point. We do acupuncture points there to calm the body, to calm the nervous system. You could just do self massage there, massaging the insides of your wrists. This is the heart and the pericardium meridians in acupuncture, so that can rest the body. And so that's one tip, is self touch, self massage. Another tip is vagus nerve. And is that something that you guys have talked about on your podcast? Are you familiar?
I mean, in a sexual way, I've talked about it with a sexologist about how that affects orgasm. So that was interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the vagus
But
nerve.
it's
And
like
so
it's an answer to so many things. I need to learn more about the vagus nerve because there's just so much. It affects so many things.
it
Mm,
runs from the brain all the way down to the gut.
mm,
And it affects, as you said, so many different things. It's the super highway that your gut
mm,
and your brain communicate along. And this is Vegas is in Latin wandering. I always make the
Mm.
joke that it's not like Nevada's
Yeah.
Vegas, like
Yeah. Not
gambling.
Las Vegas. Yeah.
It's not Las Vegas. This is the
Mm.
wandering nerve. And the vagus nerve is your switch to calm. And
Mm.
so anytime that anyone is feeling aroused or activated or excited, so you're on a plane and you're like, oh my gosh, this air is really bumpy today. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling a little bit aroused and not the good way. You can hack your vagus nerve. And so anytime you want to calm yourself, vagus nerve is a great way to do that. And so one of my favorite ways is to just simply extend the exhale.
Oh,
The
okay.
vagus nerve runs through your diaphragm. And
Mm.
so if I was sitting with you
Mhm.
and we weren't in different continents right now,
Mm.
I would reach over with your permission, of
Mm.
course, and feel your pulse. And then I would show you where to feel your pulse. Have you actually done that before? Because I could show you exactly how to do it. Do you know
Yeah,
how to find it?
I guess it's here or something.
Yeah, girl, it's right there. So for
Yeah.
those who are listening, maybe not seeing the video, is if you find your thumb on the palm side and you go to the crease in your wrist where it kind of just below where you bend your wrist, and it's where your doctor checks your pulse. And if you can't find it there, you can gently find it in your neck, or you just gently place your hand on your chest and find it. But I'm going to show you how right now you can hack your vagus nerve, and it's really, really fast. So if you can feel your pulse, we're going to just pause for a second. What I want you to do is notice the speed. We're going to notice how fast or how slow it is, kind of the rate.
Should we show? Because we're gonna have a video as well on YouTube. So,
Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
love that. So,
Yeah.
yep, you and I got it in the same place. You're even doing it like a Chinese medicine doctor because you're
Oh,
using
right.
the fingers. It's so good. Yeah. And so you're just going to notice the speed.
Hmm.
And then we're going to breathe together, and I'll just guide you. I'll count. It's going to be 4. It's going to be a square breath, and we're going to do
Okay.
4 on each one. And so what
Hmm.
you're going to do, I'll count, and you're going to notice the speed of your heart rate. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. And those for who are doing this along with us. So feel your pulse, notice the speed, and then I want you to inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold your breath at the top. 2, 3, 4. Now, really big sigh out. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then hold at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. So that was our first time going through it. But
That's
did
called
you
box breathing. Yeah. Yeah.
box breathing?
Yeah.
Did you notice in this first time? This might take a couple of goes for you to notice it, but did you see or detect a change in your pulse at any point?
Definitely. Yeah, because
You
I think
did.
that's how I started my my spiritual journey. I discovered what's it called? Belly breathing. It just blew my
Yeah.
mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll tell
And
you
so
about I'll tell you a little anecdote about that in a sec. So the third point, so that was number two.
yes. And so for those who are listening
Mm.
and doing this at home, you should have felt your pulse slow
Mm.
down on the exhale, and
Mhm.
it should speed up a little bit on the inhale. So when we inhale, we go sympathetic. That's that activation. And then when you exhale, that's parasympathetic. That's the relaxing. So first one was self-touch,
Mhm.
self-massage. The second one is elongate the exhale or do box breath to
Mhm.
activate your vagus nerve. And then the third one is, I think a really good one would be like fidgets and toys, things that you can touch.
Oh, okay.
And so that's really good when we get into this brain space where we're maybe a little dissociated, we're lost in our thoughts, we're confused, we're overwhelmed, we're just not in the body. And this is especially important for people who are more vata
Mm.
in Ayurvedic medicine. They talk about how we can go in balances in 3 different ways: vata, pitta, kapha. And people who tend towards vata, they get very in their head and they get very kind of activated and sort of airy and floaty and excited. And so
Mm.
anything that brings you back into your body is going to ground you. So fidgets, toys, especially different textures. So maybe like a rough stone or
Mm.
smooth stone, or I love those rings that you can wear where there's like beads that you can spin on the
Okay.
inside.
Because I
So
used to have
that
something squeezy to when I go to the dentist, for a filling, I used to bring something like that. And then I couldn't find it once. So then I brought a crystal, which is kind of cool just to have something
yes.
yeah, yeah.
And then your crystal's your multi-purpose, right?
Oh
You're
yeah,
like,
for sure.
what is the
Have a
benefit
rose
that I want to?
quartz.
Yeah,
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 I love.
self-love. Yeah.
I was going through a really stressful time in 2017. Like my best friend became my biggest enemy, and I was living in his house, and I had to leave, and I wasn't in a position to leave basically, and I had to work really hard just to kind of save up and leave. And it's so interesting because this guy had like the keys to the apartments. Every time I heard the lift, I was like, oh my God, oh my God. But I've discovered this app called Belly Bio, which is amazing because you put your phone on the belly and you inhale with your nose and just like make your belly go really big, and then you exhale. And when you get a regular breath, because it's just like the sounds is like waves until your breath is regular, and then you get this nice meditation music, and then you get a color like inhaling or exhaling, and then at the end it tells you how many breaths per minute and what your level of stress was. And what was so interesting is that I'd been doing it for a while, and I got to my most relaxed state when he actually came, and I realized, wow, stress is a choice, because there's a statistic about how many breaths per minute is actually, stress, or a panic attack. That's actually one of my questions. What is a panic attack? So when you're into that in that moment of, hyperventilating and really, that could be 20 breaths a minute or something. But I went down to like 2.3 breaths. It was crazy. Like,
Oh,
but it was just over time now, and it just became this beautiful addiction. I was like, wow, I want to see I'm really into biofeedback, so it was really nice to
yes.
see getting more and more relaxed, even though I was in the most stressful experience situation ever. Because when your home is under threat, that was a very hard thing to deal with, and I was getting to my very zen moments, and it was amazing. So
That's incredible. And you allowed that data to empower you. You
yeah,
made the choice. So I really love that. That's like the TLDR of my whole book. It's like ending anxiety because you allowed it to empower you. And I love that. I just wrote that down, the Belly Bio
yeah. So
app.
it's
That's
kind of a basic app, but it's honestly, I think it was for me, it was life
mm,
changing. It took me down this
mm,
path of spirituality, and then I discovered Sadhguru, and then I kind of got into um very spiritual things, and that kind of just changed my perspective on life in general. But going back to I actually want
yes.
to mention something here. I saw in your book that you're on Insight Timer. I think Insight Timer is one of the best apps
Yes.
to use for any type of desired outcome. But meditation is the inner refuge. So would you
Ooh,
like to tell us about your
ooh.
your
The
content on
inner
there?
refuge. Yes. Yes. And it's so good throughout the spectrum of autonomic arousal is that when you need it most, you will
Mm,
be so grateful for having practiced going
mm,
into arousal and then coming out of it, going into
mm.
arousal, coming out of it.
So we're talking,
Just
we say
like the
arousals for clarification. We're not talking about sexual
yeah,
arousal here. We're just talking about excitement, or what do we mean here?
that is
Arousal.
such a good question. Thank you for
Mm,
asking that because chemically they're very similar. The
okay.
difference is the context, right?
Okay.
So does this feel like a tiger's chasing me and I'm afraid? Does this feel like I'm excited working with
Mm,
my clients? Does this feel like very sexually arousing? And
mm,
so it's the context that we give to it. And so when I use the term arousal, it's kind of like just the activation of the body, the experience of going into a sympathetic activation. And so that activation can occur on a spectrum. And these strategies that you're teaching about the Belly Bio app, Insight Timer, it's useful for all of them. But you mentioned earlier, well, what is panic? How do we actually define that? And so think about it in terms of the metaphor of a stoplight, where green is when you feel parasympathetic, you feel calm, you feel chill, you feel relaxed, you're in your vibe, you feel connected to spirit. In polyvagal theory, this is your ventral vagal. This is feeling connected to self and others. And then as we become aroused, as our body gets activated, it'll shift into the yellow light zone. And so this is where it's like, ooh, I feel a little sexually excited, or I feel a little overwhelmed, or a little irritated, or a little worried, or a little confused, or my thoughts are going, whatever that is for us, neither good nor bad. It just is. It's just our body doing what our body does best. We're going into arousal. And then if that arousal continues, then we can go into the red light zone, which is where it feels like either sheer panic, or it could be a rage attack, or it can be just complete dissociation, where it's like some people, they just forget, they lose time because it's just too overwhelming for them. And so panic, I think about more on that red side of the stoplight. But if we can catch the signs of that before, then when the body is whispering, we don't have to wait till it's shouting. We can listen to the whispers. And this, I want to circle back to orgasm sexually, because this is so important for people who are listening to this conversation, this podcast, is if you desire, let's say tonight, you desire to have a beautiful sexual experience, is you want to do everything that you can to get yourself into that green zone.
Mm.
Remember, point and shoot, right? So you want to get into the parasympathetic, you want to get into the green zone, you want to four square breath, or do the belly breathing, you want to do self massage, you want to drink some nice tea, you want to breathe through the vertex of your head all the way down through your root chakra. You want to notice your body, anything you can to get into your body in a way that feels safe. And then from that foundation of green, you can more easily and more successfully have an orgasmic experience. But if you come into it and you're already in the yellow light zone, that adrenaline can inhibit you from actually becoming sexually aroused and having a satisfactory orgasm.
Amazing. So tell us about your content on Insight Timer.
I have I think 4 guided imageries. They're all free, which I love,
Mm.
about Insight Timer, and they are very trauma informed. And so my heart is to help us notice the symptoms that our body is producing, and to hold space for them and to acknowledge them. They're like 15 minutes long. And so you can find it at Dr. Nicole Cain. And I
Perfect. So for those who are
love
familiar,
that.
Insight Timer is my favorite meditation.
Yes.
So good. Been using it for
Yeah.
5 years. Yeah.
It's
I do,
my
I,
favorite too. I
yeah,
love
I use
it.
affirmations. I do affirmations on there. So
You
'cause
do.
yeah, because at the end of every episode on my podcast, I do an affirmations meditation. And some of them are sexual, like I'm an orgasmic woman, or my favorite was clitoral gratitude affirmations. So I interviewed a woman
Yes.
who wrote Becoming Clitorate. That's my first ever episode. So, but a lot of them are kind of normal topics. And I guess for this one, I'll just make one about I am calm, I am safe, or about anxiety. So it's all affirmations. I used to do whispered, but now that's just normal voice because it's just easier to edit. So I have all these different affirmations coming out every week. But I really, really love it. And I listen to my own voice a lot because that's actually really good for your own kind of um I like to call it consensual brainwashing. So
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
I love it. So what I really want to ask you as well from your book, something that stood out to me from your book was the relation between anxiety, depression, and the gut health. Because I'm so into nutrition and food, and everyone's talking about the gut lately. And how does it influence it? And what can we do in terms of nutrition to feel better?
Yeah, the gut does so much talking.
Mm,
We talk about that. The vagus nerve is that highway, that super highway between the gut and the brain. And it turns out that the gut is doing 80% of the talking. We
wow.
found in the research that our emotions, so if you feel sad, that could be your gut. If you
Mhm.
feel sexually randy,
Mm,
that could be your gut. If you feel anxious, that could be yeast in your gut. These little bacteria have so much to say, and they regulate our thoughts, our memories, our moods, our hormones, our immune system. All of the things are by and large regulated by our gut. And so the health of our gut, the balance of our gut, as we can imagine, is profoundly important. And so when we used to study probiotics, which are supplements that can come in the form of a capsule or a powder or a yogurt, or they may fortify foods with them, is that these are live bacteria that we can take And the objective is to increase microbial diversity, because more diversity is generally more good. And
Mm.
so what we used to do as a profession is we would just give as many as possible. And so I would tell my clients, I'm like, okay, try to find a strain that has at least 4 different kinds of bacteria and as high of a dose as you can get, like 80 billion. And it turns out that that's not as precise as we can be. So if we do testing, and let's say that they have imbalances in cortisol, so we talked about that stress hormone earlier, that there are, as it turns out, specific bacteria that can regulate metabolism of your cortisol. Or let's say that you are perimenopausal
Mm.
and estrogen is anti-anxiety and your estrogen levels are going down and you're struggling. And so there are specific bacteria that are involved in estrogen metabolism. So what this led to is the development of a type of probiotic called a psychobiotic.
Wow.
And a psychobiotic, it's the specific bacteria that we've known in the research that can affect your mood. And so now, instead of just giving a bunch and hoping for the best, we could be really strategic. And we're finding that so I have so many testimonials from people that it actually can restore the health of the gut. It can restore balance of hormones. It can restore mood. It can get anxiety down just by getting the gut back on track and using these probiotics, these psychobiotics. And then food, you mentioned, is if your audience, if you or if I could only do one thing different with our diet to try to get our guts healthy. Let's say we don't have access to all these fun psychobiotics and we don't have access to all the pills and things. Maybe it's cost prohibitive, or maybe they don't make them where you are. Is one positive thing that you can do is fiber, fiber, fiber.
Okay, that's
Eat
whole
more
food,
fiber.
whole food
Yeah.
plant-based, like all, because I actually also read I always have sauerkraut and kimchi and kombucha,
Yes.
things like that. I also read somewhere that having 30 different types of plants, that's including herbs and spices, to kind of to get that diversity as well. I've interviewed
Yeah.
Dr. Michael Greger on here, Dr. Joel Furman, so I'm really into the
Yes.
plant-based life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the plant-based life. And
Mm.
I love this so much. So I studied herbalism. And when we think about our plant friends, is they're not growing with you don't have just a field in nature of just like straight up ginkgo biloba.
Mm.
That ginkgo is going to be growing with all of its friends. It's going to be growing with shatavari, and it's going to be growing with bacopa, and it's going to be growing with chamomile, and it's going to be growing with dandelion. They're all growing with their companions. And and so when we try to pull out the plant, let's say ashwagandha, because
Oh yeah,
that's
I
a
love it.
common one a lot of people know
Mm.
about, is that when we take the ashwagandha and then we study all of the active constituents, all the active ingredients, and we're like, it's the flavonoid. And then we give it to people in isolation in extremely high doses. And then it doesn't work the way that we thought it worked. And so what I love about what you were saying and what the other people who've been on this podcast are saying is use plant diversity. Think about how your plants grow together, where they grow, what region of the world are you living in? Mother Nature often has what we need where we need it. So an example is in Phoenix. I live half the year in Phoenix, Arizona. It's very desert, very rocky. And one of the primary ways that we injure ourselves in the Phoenix area is sunburn.
Uh-huh.
And a secondary way is you scrape yourself on a rock. And two very common plants that we find in Phoenix are aloe vera,
Mm.
growing right there in the rocks. Aloe vera is great for sunburn. And then we have chaparral or creosote, which is this beautiful plant. It's what makes the desert smell clean and beautiful after a rain. And that plant is useful to help with scrapes and abrasions. It heals you. And so oftentimes the herbs and the plants, the food and the medicine that we need grow at the time and in the place where we need them most.
That's amazing. I actually went to this event last week called Plants as Medicine, and we made this thing called Four Thieves something. Have you heard about this? It's from the some French plague in the past, and it's basically, I think they had we made it with apple cider vinegar, thyme, oregano, lavender, mint, and then some garlic cloves, and we have to kind of shake it and leave it for a month, and they do it on and it's actually for colds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
love all
My
that. Yeah.
my teachers called that the anti-plague formula. We put
Yeah.
horseradish in it too.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually put something in history that some people were, everyone was dying, but except for these people who were using this particular blend. So, but I
Yeah.
love all that because I actually get I go to a herbalist and she makes me potions. Like I've got my insomnia potion, I've got my digestion one. Like I've got my brain potion as well for concentration, which has got gotu kola, rosemary, and something else. I can't remember. Ginkgo biloba as
Ginkgo
well. So that's like a
biloba.
blend. When I want to write, it's like
Uh,
I'm a real witch,
that
and so I just love all that stuff in like big jars of herbs. Yeah.
let's talk about herbs for libido.
Okay, yeah, tell
I
us.
actually made a recipe just for you and for your audience. It's called
Love it.
yeah, this is a gift from me to you. So I call this the libido blend, but I love giving them names that really resonate with you. And so
Mhm.
that when you take your herbs, you could be like, okay, thank you, herbal friends, for this gift that you're giving me of X, Y, and Z. And so then
Mhm.
you're what did you say earlier? It's like consensual self auto brainwash.
Consensual brainwashing.
So then you're consensually brainwashing yourself with these
Mm.
tinctures. So the first herb is going to be 25% of the mix. And I like to teach people to, so I have a bottle here, is get an amber bottle. You can buy them
Yeah.
online. And then buy the mother tinctures. And so just get like separate bottles. I was hoping I had just like a separate glass bottle of an individual herb, but buy a bottle of ginkgo biloba and then
Uh-huh.
buy a bottle of bacopa and buy all, and then you can mix them and make your own medicine at home, which is
Yeah.
fun. So this one, you're going to have 25%. It'll be shatavari, which have you heard of
I've never
this
heard of it.
amazing plant?
No.
Okay. So ashwagandha is called like the male
Mm.
rejuvenative herb, the libido boosting herb. It's like the herb for male formulas. Shatavari is the herb for women.
How do you spell
She's an
that? Hmm.
Shatvari. Wild asparagus is her common name.
Oh, wow.
And she's known in Ayurvedic medicine as the queen of herbs. She improves well being, memory, youth, strength. She's an antidepressant, aphrodisiac, strengthens the body and the mind. They call her the heavenly spirit herb because it opens the heart and it makes you feel connected. And as an aphrodisiac, this is just generally an awesome herb for women and libido. So I would put 25% shatavari in there and then maca
Oh,
or
yeah.
lipidium. And
That's
so
dangerous.
our good friend maca, so 25% maca, and
Mm.
then turnera is another one.
Never heard of
That's
that.
another it's an aphrodisiac. It's
Mhm.
Turnera. Turnera, amazing aphrodisiac. It plays really nice with shatavari. So they're synergistic. They enhance each other's activity. And then a little bit of horny goatweed, like
Horny.
epidimium. Yeah, horny goatweed. So the Latin name is epimedium. So Epimedium. And so that will be, so we have 25% shatavari, 25% maca, 25% turnera, 20% horny goatweed, and then we always leave one little titch left of 5% for a driver herb. And that's the herb that's like the cheerleader, the igniter, the spark plugs. That's what's going to make your formula work really well. And you want to base that on your constitutional temperament. And so if you're more chilly and you want to have a warm heavy blanket, you generally, when you just like to be warm and cuddly, then put an herb in there that's warming, like cinnamon or rosemary.
Uh-huh.
If you are a very spicy kind of warm blooded person, then put something in there that's cooling, like glycyrrhiza or licorice, or maybe even lavender. And so that's
Wow.
your sexual power libido blend tincture just for you.
So would that help with hormone with menopausal women who are losing libido as well?
The maca can absolutely.
Mm,
So if that's
amazing.
like the main thing for you, then maybe you would want to make the maca a higher dose. Maybe make that first
Mhm.
and then put shatavari under it. But both shatavari and maca are great for perimenopausal and menopausal women.
Amazing. I'm going to ask my herbalist to get that,
Yeah.
get that for me. That's so cool.
Yeah. That's my favorite. I hope you love it. I'd love actually to hear about it. And so when using herbs, as opposed to like if we give you like a pharmaceutical, herbs take a little bit of time to work. So give it like take it every day. Of course, talk to your doctor first. But I always tell my patients take it every single day and give it a month before you decide. Because it's going to be slow and steady. It's not going to be like boop, orgasm central. It's going to
Yes.
be a little slow and steady wins the race.
So I think people expect, immediate results, and I think with plants it takes a little bit longer. So in your
Yeah.
practice now, is it all kind of alternative, or how do you work these days?
I like to look at it from, we call it the therapeutic order in naturopathic medicine, which is a few steps. And so the very first step is addressing anything acute. And so if somebody has uncontrolled diabetes, we have to do that first.
Mm,
Or if someone's having horrible panic attacks and insomnia, you just calm the nervous system, get them sleeping first. So it's the first step. And then the second step is give the body what it needs. Your body can heal itself. Just like if you fall and scrape your knee, your body's going to heal that, even if you forget about it. Similarly, your body can heal your gut, it can heal your brain, it can heal your mood, it can heal your trauma, it can do all of the wonderful, wonderful things. We just have to support that. So, love, orgasms, sleep, hugs, nutrition, plants, all those things. The third step is removing obstacles to cure. We talked about that earlier with relationship ectomies
I love
and
that word, relationship.
yes.
Yeah.
So, what
Mm,
is in your life that's getting in the way of you getting the life that you want? And then the fourth is to tonify weak and damaged systems. And so, this is like tonifying your muscles, just like we go and we exercise if we want to have really good arms. We
mm,
want to tonify our liver, we want to tonify our kidneys. And so, I'm thinking about um, hot and cold showers, hydrotherapy, acupuncture, exercise, crying on a regular basis,
mm.
things that are just like activating and good for your body. And then the very last step I think is really important, which is the whole recalibration part. And so your body, your mind, you've been programmed, uh, arguably against your will, from the moment that you came into this world by your family, by culture, by the world around you, by your bacteria that you inherited from your mother, right? And so as we get older and we're reclaiming our power and we're creating the lives that we want, we have to reprogram all of that. We have to go through and audit what patterns that we have created and adapted. So it's kind of like you inherit a house and you're going to redecorate it. Be like, this isn't my house. This is their stuff. I want that out. I want it to be me. And so that last step is all about noticing your symptoms and being really intentional with auditing and recalibrating it. And so that's how I work with patients. And I like to play with all of the tools to help support that.
Amazing. So tell us quickly about your book writing process. How was that?
I'm going to show you something I haven't shown anybody else. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see it.
Oh
Do you
wow, I
see
love
that?
it. That's so
Yes.
cool.
So each post-it note so they're color coordinated by concept. And then
Mhm.
each post-it note is something that I want to teach. And so the process of writing is like, I scaffolded it all out, but I need to see it all at the same time. And so
You're
I
quite
put it on
visual then.
post-its. I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
Yes. And so then every single one of those post-it notes, they could be rearranged and moved. And that was the birthing place of Panic Proof. And like part of me is like, I need to put some actual art on that wall. But part
Okay.
of me is like, how
Frame
grateful
it.
am I?
Just get a big
Just like
frame and leave it
just
without.
put a big frame and a piece of
Yeah.
glass over it.
And then have the book. Have the book there as well.
Yeah, I should get a little shelf and put the book there. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, because
But it's fun.
there's always a story behind a book. I always find,
Yeah.
was it
Yeah.
did you have panic writing it?
You know what? I loved writing it. I don't know what your experience is with your book, but I found it to be the most beautiful, therapeutic, wonderful thing in the world. Is like it's like I was put on this earth to write this book. Even if 10 people read it, I really believe and hope that it can help change those 10 people's lives.
Amazing. But I think if in
Yeah.
case it's like when you're in flow, it's like you're channeling almost, like no writer's block
Yeah.
coming through. Yeah.
Yeah. We're
Really.
like a victim to the
Mhm.
flow. We're
Yeah.
just like get out of the way and flow. Yeah.
That's so cool. I guess a lot of research in your books. I think a lot of mine like comes from just my own, well, like a lot of research as well, but it's a nice exercise when it's a nice process when it's just flowing through you and that you
Yeah.
there's no blocks, you know. Mhm.
I really appreciate that it is allowing that balance between intuition and flow. And
Mhm.
also for me as a first time author and coming at panic from more of an integrative model
Mhm.
is I think that there's going to be a lot of skeptical eyes reviewing this material because I'm not just regurgitating a book that's been written and proven a dozen times.
Mhm.
Is that everything that I claim, I went and did a bunch of research to make sure that not only was I representing it accurately, but that it was fully studied in its integrity and that I differentiate that in the work is like, this is my opinion. Like this herbal tincture I gave you, some of this, I called Shatavari a she. It hasn't been studied for gender. It's how I experience and use the herb.
Mhm.
But then when we talk about the vagus nerve activation, is that's backed up by PubMed and studies and research. So it's
There's a lot
like
of
you were saying.
responsibility in that sense because I think with mine it was just very
Yeah.
esoteric, so it's just kind of like can be anything. But I guess when it's like
Yeah.
medical, there's a lot of responsibility there to kind of get these to fact check and everything.
Yeah. I can't wait to read yours. It's so fun.
I'm
And
actually
I think
currently
that, yeah.
I'm just actually translating at the moment, so I'm trying to do like I'll hopefully have the English one by out in November. So
All right.
really want to get that out.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
where's it going to be sold?
Well, I've got the biggest publisher in Spain in Spanish. I gave them the rights for all languages except for English because I might self-publish if I don't find a publisher. Because I want to get it out fast. Because now I'm gonna have like press and stuff like that. So I want to have
Yeah.
the English version out quite quickly. And then just do Amazon for at first. I've never self-published before. This is actually my fourth book. So in the past, I've published with Penguin Random House and in Spanish. So
Yes.
it's been 10 years
Yeah.
since my last book. This is a very different experience. This one was like channeled, and I have no expectations of it, which is kind of a nice experience. But I've just been to England now, and I'm a big reader. I went to WH Smith. Do you know WH Smith? It's a big
No, tell me.
bookshop. It's like a bookshop, and
Ooh.
they have these deals like buy one get the second one half price. So I just bought four books now. I've just been reading Green Lights. You're talking about traffic lights earlier. I've been reading Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights on the plane. It was like amazing.
Yeah.
Days reading. I'm just fascinated by that process. I think it is like having a baby almost because it is like you're birthing something, and there's a whole, at first it's an idea, then it's a Word document or a proposal, and it's a manuscript. And then it's when
Yeah.
you have that first book in your hands, it's just a very beautiful experience. So it's a beautiful thing to
Oh.
experience. Yeah.
I honor that you are back at it and that you're
Yeah.
doing it and sharing 'cause the information that you're bringing to the world is so important
Oh,
and you have such a beautiful way of articulating things and so I can't wait to read it. And
yeah,
thank you
I'm
for
loving
being a
it.
part of me sharing my book. I'm so honored and grateful for you reading my book and getting the chance to talk about it with you. That just adds so much richness to my
That,
experience.
that's my USP because I actually do read books because this whole this three dildos that shelf there, that's
Yeah.
all my podcast guests. So I've
Oh,
interviewed all of those authors, and that's something that's very special to me because I'm a big reader. So to read a book and then speak to the author is very special.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Oh,
very cool. It's a real privilege. Yeah.
so amazing. You rock, sister.
Oh, thank you so much. So where can people find you?
Yes, you can find my book anywhere books are sold. The website for the book is panicproof.com. And
Mhm.
I'm Dr. Nicole Cain, and you can find me on Instagram. I'm really active there. I love to hang out with you. It's DrNicoleCain.
Perfect. Oh, actually, two questions before I forget. I always ask everyone
Yes.
these two questions. What is the book that changed your life?
Oh, The Body Keeps the Score,
Okay.
100%. Yeah, by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. That book, I was like, oh my God, this is everything put together in a beautiful trauma-informed magical bow.
Yeah, I think the Truth Doctor said I interviewed the Truth Doctor, Dr. Courtney
Yeah.
Casey. I interviewed her. I think she said the same one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's dense. That's a really
Mm,
science heavy book, but anybody who wants to really dig into the research behind how adversity and trauma and overwhelm can change our body and our brains and how to heal that, that's a really good book. Start with it was published, I think, 2014, and
mm,
it's still a mainstay today.
amazing. And what about a quote or affirmation that you live by?
The affirmation that I live by comes from Samuel Hahnemann in the 1800s, and he talks about the mission of the doctor, and it is to help stimulate the health in a person to the degree which they can live in their body to their highest potential, to their greatest glory, in a way that obliges wonderment to those looking on.
That's amazing. That's really cool,
That,
beautiful. I think modern medicine might have lost that somewhere
yeah,
somehow.
we're
Yeah.
taking it back. We're taking
Yeah.
it
That's
back.
so cool.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so thank you for joining us on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation.
The book I'm reading now is Good Vibes, Good Life: How Self-Love is the Key to Unlocking Your Greatness. And this is by Vex King. I saw this book in Manchester Airport when I was about to fly home. And I just love the format. It's kind of smaller than most books, a bit thicker, and it's just very simple cover. And I'm all about self-love. I'm creating a holistic self-love retreat next year. I've also started doing self-love coaching, so I'm all about that right now. So I thought it's good to have some more self-love content in my mind to draw from. And this is it's a very entry level book to self-help, to self love, and also to manifestation. But I think even if you're on this journey, it's always good to be reminded, because we do need constant reminders about how we should love ourselves. And it was very easy to read, very digestible, and it just encompasses very different areas of life, such as drinking less or eating better and just really taking care of yourself. And I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday, about self-love and spirituality. And I think because I was raised Catholic, I think self-love wasn't a thing. It was kind of people valued when you put yourself last and put other people first. And I've seen that so much in my family, in the environment that I grew up in, especially for women sacrificing their own well-being for others. And that's exactly my target client, women who have been putting themselves last. And to some degree, sometimes you might have to do that. But I think, when your cup is full, you can give so much more. So having a self-love reminder is a good thing. So I kind of read this book. It's very light and digestible. I didn't think I found anything new in it, because I'm quite advanced in my journey of spirituality and reading materials, because I'm just such a bookworm. But I do think it's a great book to read or to gift someone who might feel a little lost and who wants to start this journey, and someone who doesn't really read a lot as well. And Vex King is quite well known on social media. So even if you're not into books, I would highly recommend following his Instagram account, which is full of very motivational quotes, just little bite-sized snippets of wisdom that you can follow every day. Because I do think social media has been blamed for so much. It has, a very bad rap for how it's affecting our mental health. But I do believe that it kind of depends on who you're following as well. If you're following accounts that seemingly these influencers have these amazing lives, it might not be like that behind the scenes, and people forget that often, and they get, full of FOMO, envy, and but if you're following, let's say, accounts that can add value to your life. I mean, for me, I open up Instagram and I instantly see vegan recipes. And I'm like, oh, wow, that looks amazing and creative and delicious and healthy, and also spiritual content. So I just do feel very inspired when I actually use social media personally, because I don't follow anyone who is giving me a bad feeling in my body, because now I'm really connecting with how's my body reacting to things. And if it's kind of like oh, I'm not doing that, then just unfollow, mute, and but it's always good to use these tools in ways that are going to empower us. So I definitely recommend following Vex King on Instagram, and also this book if you are new to this journey, or if you just need a reminder. And that's the book I'm reading now. Good Vibes, Good Life by Vex King. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I am calm. I am safe. I am grounded in this moment. I release control over what I cannot change. I am capable and resilient. I breathe in calmness, letting go of tension with each exhale. I am grateful for every moment of peace that comes my way. I am calm. I am safe. I trust in life's process. I am the observer of my thoughts. I take one step at a time, and that is enough. I am deserving of peace and love. I am grateful for every moment of peace that comes my way. I am calm. I am safe. I focus on what I can influence. I am relaxed. I am centered. I choose to respond with peace and clarity. I am grateful for every moment of peace that comes my way. I am calm. I am safe. I let go of perfection and embrace my progress. I am worthy of taking up space and speaking my truth. I welcome feelings of peace into my mind and body. I trust in my ability to handle whatever comes my way. I am grateful for every moment of peace comes my way. I am calm. I am safe. I am present. I release worry and welcome serenity. I am becoming stronger with each passing day. I find joy in simple moments, grounding myself in gratitude. I am grateful for every moment of peace that comes my way. I am calm. I am safe. I allow my body to fully relax. I allow my mind to fully relax. I honor my journey. I release what no longer serves me. I am grateful for every moment of peace that comes my way. Dear listener, due to popular demand, I am so thrilled to be offering 60-minute Zoom sessions just for you. Imagine an hour talking to me, oh my God, about all of the topics that I am a specialist in. I can help you with sexual wellness consulting. That could involve your sexual wellness business or even your personal life if you need some sex coaching to spice up your life with your partner or even your solo sex life. I can definitely help you with that. I'm also offering self-love mentoring, and I'll be testing out my materials for my forthcoming self-love retreat. And these sessions are getting some excellent feedback. I'm also offering Orgasmic Manifestation, the sex magic guidance, which is the topic of my book. And it's something that I am also very passionate about. I'm having excellent results with. And also, life in Barcelona. If you want to visit Barcelona or live in Barcelona, I am your woman. I can provide you with lots of tips. And last but not least, if you need a personal shopper for your pleasure product purchases, PPPPP, I am your woman. So we can connect and I will show you the best products for your needs. So are you ready to take the next step? If so, secure your spot today by visiting my website, venusohara.org, or you can click on the link in the show notes below. Let's make this hour all about you and your orgasmic journey. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/venusohara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening. Have an orgasmic week and make sure every day is a climax.